Okay, you can see I tied a rope for my Revo going up and down the ladder, which will actually help guys from saying they fell off a ladder. The ladders are going to be tied, and if they are working up there and they get a little bit dizzy, they'll have something. Okay, so here we got some werewolves rope that I'm going to prep out to have a shock absorber at the top. It is a shame. It's a beautiful rope. It has 2 carabiners, but I will cut it into 4 pieces and prep it. Seriously, this stuff is difficult to get unraveled. Apparently, the climbing rope, even the 8mm rope, is grabbier. Maybe better suited for rappelling, but it is unsuited for the Revo as far as feeding goes. The plan apparently is going to be to put a bag of rocks to weight the rope and the dead end of the rope, and then have a string to pull it up underneath a bungee, I guess, attached, and that will lift the weight off as you're descending. Here's white nylon rope. It will hold 15 times my weight. It slides through the Revo really good and preps out just fine, as opposed to the climbing rope that is like a bodybuilder that you can't get to the job, and it will not work, even though they have much promise and strength. The nylon works with just 1 handful of rocks in a sock. I think this rope will need about 3 handfuls of rocks in a sock. Here's the shock absorber before it's wrapped up, bungees, and the load-bearing rope. Here I'm using masking tape for a quick breakaway. This will need to be in a sleeve in order to keep it from getting tangled in the ladders, which was almost a catastrophe when I was actually trying to move a ladder and get the ladder down. So there's nothing that can break other than your bungee, which it doesn't, you don't really, by that time you're going to be slowed down anyway. Here, quite literally, I'm using a sleeve for the sleeve. A little bit of scissors and duct tape. The duct tape will probably hold for a year or 2, but it will keep the thing from getting tangled in the ladder, which is very important. Of course, everything is mathematical and theoretical, so it's possible that the sleeve will keep the bungee cord from retracting after it has been stretched a little bit or leaned on. It might hinder the opening of it. I doubt it, though. Now, I think when you're working on the top of a ladder like this, you're more likely to lose your balance when you're working at the very top. Sometimes you got to use both hands, and you tend to fall backwards a little bit. Didn't really happen to me until I was about 40. Okay, when you're working toward the top of this ladder, you're more likely to fall off when you're using both hands and getting older with the balance issues. So I didn't like the 3-foot shock absorber at all. So I'm actually bypassing it by tying with a double hitch right to the first loop here. You have a little bit of shock absorption there, which you don't want too much when you're doing this, so that might actually help a lot. The design of the loop cache is to stretch from 1 meter to 2 meters, so you need 2 meters of rope. I also give about 1 meter to tie off at post the final loop, and about 31 inches on the 2 little dangly bungee cords. It's about 4 meters straight for the cutoff on the bungee that is wrapped 4 times around the 2 loops to actually retract them together. Of course, be very careful because it does take a lot of bungee cord. If I had to do it again, I'd probably get 250 feet of bungee cord. And the bungee cord is not going to last forever. My experience with elastic is after about 1 or 2 years, you need to buy new elastic. Headlamps, sometimes they last a couple years, but not that much. It's very important that things do stretch and they do retract, otherwise a person could get killed if they actually did fall any appreciable distance. So make sure the bungees are new. In retrospect, the horizontal ropes worked way better than the vertical Tarzan ropes because they gave you more options. The vertical ropes did save me one time when I was pressure washing against getting blasted off the ladder with 4,000 psi, and so I was grateful. Of course, the original design was to use both at one time. It was just a pain in the butt, especially when operating in a air supplied hood with lots of cord to keep changing the vertical ropes. Very frustrating. I'd like to reiterate that the 8mm rope was the only way to go with climbing rope. However, I will still need some weighted socks at the bottom and maybe a little string that I can relieve the tension on the way down so that it doesn't start trying to repel on me when I'm descending. Obviously, this is going to take a lot of book bags to store all this rope. I did have one of my best spools of rope stolen because I did not cover it up, and apparently the neighborhood kids came and took it. So always cover up your stuff. The other thing that I'm noticing is that for efficiency's sake, these things are being taken down. I took down the top ones, then I'm taking these down. Meanwhile, I'm still going to be working down there, so I'm losing my fall protection, which is not necessarily good. So these zipped out pretty good. For the purposes of estimation, I would probably say a half hour for each anchor point. Possibly less as you get faster, but I think, removing them, putting them up the ladder, putting the screws in, planing it, tying your rope, and all that stuff. I think it took about two hours to get 6 anchors into the side. I think they'll be coming out much quicker. Patching, obviously, when I'm painting it, I'm not going to be using as powerful tools if I'm just spot painting as if I'm blasting something with a paint sprayer or big brush or something like that. This is the product that I'm using, which is 3M5X, which dries in about 5 minutes to patch those holes. Doing this, I was covered about 99 to 95% of the time, which means that this is only to be done by qualified people who know how to climb around and move ladders. Otherwise, people are going to get overconfident and they're going to be dancing around and eventually falling and getting hurt. And we don't really want that, do we? No, we don't. It's really for people that are qualified, experienced, and might have some health issues, possibly drug issues, but definitely anything can happen. Here is my modified 2x6 joist hanger. I drilled another hole in it using a hole punch and some cobalt drills and some oil. Okay, I have lived about 6 years of my life back in the 80s on planks like that. I do not think that they're appropriate because I think you just move too quickly and you have 2 hours between coats. They also are more dangerous than ladders. They do allow you to paint three-dimensional work, such as this tooth molding. I think they're absolutely essential on something like that, but even if that were one color, I think it would go quicker with the plank system. Up there you have a little bit of three-dimensionality on those bricks. It worked out really well as a nice, comfortable place to put my tools and to work off of. I don't know that it sped anything up. Probably takes a half hour to put up and a half hour to take down. And whereas, of course, ladders, you're constantly going up and down. I think the main advantage of planks is that they allow you an excuse to leave up your equipment for days at a time, rather than ladders that you have to take down every single night, which is not efficient at all. You need to actually be able to leave ladders in one place as long as possible until that area's got its 6 different stages or 9 different stages that you're doing on working going through in order to get a proper job. Um, and so, I don't know, the slide looks okay. Looks pretty good. Hopefully it will last a good 20 years or so. Physically putting up and taking down the planks is no big deal with a plank like this. I do own planks that are 200 pounds, which would not be viable. Um, there are definitely times where I wish I worked out more. Note that I'm using a clipping system never going more than 2 feet off horizontal. I tried pulleys, but they did not work because they were way too slow. I will use them elsewhere. This doesn't look as weird. This is a halo with a soccer halo and a bump cap underneath a baseball cap. Um, Everything else looks weird. I started out with the $20 Amazon, then I switched to the $35 one, which is much easier to get into. It is more like the Cadillac versus the Yugo, except the Yugo is much harder to get into. You always need a tool belt, however, that fights with your mountain climbing harness. It can be worn on the side.